Before we begin tonight's story, make sure you hit subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to stay close when the lights go out.
I still remember the day we left for our honeymoon. It was bright and warm and everything felt perfect. My name is Lucas and my wife's name is Grace. We had been married only a week. We were young, happy, and in love, the kind of love that makes you think nothing bad could ever happen. We decided to spend our honeymoon in a quiet mountain resort, far from the city. Grace found a place online, Silver Pine Retreat. The photos looked peaceful. Small wooden cabins, tall trees, and a lake that shimmered like glass. It was exactly what we wanted, privacy and peace. The drive started beautifully. The highway was smooth, the air smelled of pine, and we kept laughing, playing songs, talking about our future. But as the sun began to set, the GPS suddenly froze. I tapped the screen. Signal's gone. Grace frowned. We're close though, right? Should be, I said. Maybe 10 miles. Then, just before the connection died completely, the GPS rerouted us. A new path appeared, marked as a shortcut. It looked like a narrow road cutting through the woods. Grace looked uncertain. Are you sure? I smiled, trying to sound confident. It's fine. Probably a quicker way up. That was my mistake. The road started narrow, then rough. The trees pressed closer. The sky disappeared behind thick branches. It felt like we were driving into a tunnel made of forest. This can't be right, Grace said softly. But turning back wasn't easy. The road had grown too tight, with no space to reverse. I kept driving, hoping it would open up. Then, after another half hour, we reached a fork. No signs, no lights, nothing. Just two dirt roads leading into darkness. Grace whispered, Lucas, this place feels wrong. She was right. The air felt heavier, colder. I chose the left path. After a few minutes, we saw something ahead, a small figure standing in the road. I hit the brakes. It was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, barefoot, wearing a pale dress. Her hair covered her face. Is she lost? Grace whispered. I leaned forward, honking gently. The child didn't move. Then she slowly turned her head toward us. Her face was gray, not dirty, but pale like candle wax. Her eyes were dark, hollow, lifeless. Grace screamed, Lucas, go! I pressed the gas, swerved around her, and sped forward. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. When I looked in the rearview mirror, she was gone. Not walking away, just gone. Maybe it was a prank, I said, though my voice trembled. Grace didn't answer. She was shaking, staring out the window. Then the road opened into a clearing. A small wooden house stood ahead, light flickering inside. Maybe someone can help, I said. We got out carefully. The forest was silent. No wind, no birds. Only that faint flicker of light from inside the cabin. I knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open. The smell hit first. Damp wood, mold, and something else. Something metallic. The house was empty. Just a single chair, a cracked mirror on the wall, and a child's shoe lying on the floor. Grace picked up the shoe. It was small. Red. That's when we heard the whisper. A man's voice, low, rough, and close. Why did you come here? We spun around. No one was there. The door slammed shut behind us. The mirror began to fog over, though there was no heat, no steam. Then slowly words appeared across the glass. She died here. Grace dropped the shoe. Lucas, let's go! We rushed out, jumped back in the car, and tore down the road. But after a few minutes, I realized something horrifying. The The path looked exactly the same. The same trees, the same bends, the same crooked fence on the left. We circled back to the same cabin. Grace started crying. "We're trapped! Lucas, what's happening?" Before I could answer, we both saw it. Someone standing at the edge of the trees. Not the child. This time it was a man, tall, thin, wearing a torn jacket. His face was hidden in shadow. He took one slow step forward, and then another. "Stay inside," I whispered, locking the doors. The man's face finally came into view. His eyes were milky white, his skin pale and stretched. He pointed toward the woods. Behind him, another figure appeared, this time a woman, her dress torn and wet, her hair dripping as if she had just come out of a lake.
Grace grabbed my arm. "Who are they?" I didn't answer. I just stared. The man and woman stood perfectly still, like shadows waiting for the dark to fall. Then, without a sound, the child appeared between them. The same pale girl we had seen earlier. She was holding the red shoe. Grace's voice broke. "Lucas, please drive." I pressed the gas. The tires spun in mud before catching grip. The figures didn't move. They just watched as we sped away. But the forest didn't end. No matter how far we drove, the road twisted endlessly, folding back on itself. The GPS screen flickered with static. The clock on the dashboard froze at 9:13 p.m. Grace whispered, "We're not leaving, are we?" I didn't know what to say. A few minutes later, the engine started sputtering. The fuel gauge dropped to empty, though I had filled it that morning. The car coughed once and died. I sat back, silent. The only sound was Grace crying softly beside me. "We'll walk," I said finally. "Maybe there's a way out on foot." We stepped out into the thick darkness. The forest seemed to close behind us. The air smelled strange, a mix of earth, smoke, and something rotten. We followed the dirt road until we saw light again. But it wasn't the cabin. It was something else. A small wooden church, half buried in the hill, its windows flickering with faint candlelight. "Let's go inside," I said. Grace hesitated. "It feels wrong." Everything felt wrong. But I couldn't just stand there in the cold. The wooden door creaked as I pushed it open. The smell of old candles and wet dust filled the air. Inside were 3 pews, a broken cross, and an altar covered in black wax. And then I saw it. 3 photos nailed to the wall behind the altar. A man, a woman, and a child. The man looked stern, his eyes deep and angry. The woman's smile was faint but sad. The child, she was the same girl we had seen on the road. Beneath the photos, someone had written in faded red paint, "They never left." Grace stepped back. "Lucas, let's go." But before we could move, the candles began to flicker wildly. A voice echoed through the church, soft at first, then louder. "She took my daughter. She took her away from me." It was a man's voice, the same one from the cabin. Grace gasped, "Who's there?" The air turned cold, the doors slammed shut, the candle flames stretched higher, then blew out all at once. In the sudden darkness, we heard footsteps on the wooden floor. Slow, dragging, getting closer. I reached for Grace's hand. "Stay close." A faint light appeared near the altar. The man's figure emerging, his face twisted in grief and anger. "She drowned her," she said, voice breaking. "In the lake below this hill. My wife killed our child, and then herself. Now they all wander here, waiting for anyone foolish enough to take this road. Grace whispered, "What about you?" He looked at me with hollow eyes. I never left either. Then his skin began to crack like dry earth splitting open, and his face fell apart into dust.
We ran. Out the door, into the trees. I didn't know where we were going. The forest was spinning, the moonlight shifting in strange patterns. Grace tripped and fell near the edge of a hill. I grabbed her hand, but before I could pull her up, she froze. "Lucas," she whispered, "the lake." Below us, through the mist, we saw it, a small lake reflecting the pale moon. And on the shore stood the woman, the same one from the photos. Her dress was soaked, her eyes empty. In her arms, she held the child. I whispered, "Grace, don't look." But Grace couldn't turn away. The woman slowly looked up at us. Then she smiled, a faint, broken smile, and began walking across the water. Her feet didn't sink. Grace screamed, "She's coming!" I pulled Grace to her feet and we ran, but the forest didn't lead us out. Every turn took us back toward the lake. The woman's voice echoed softly, "Stay, stay with us." I felt my breath growing shorter. The trees looked different now, their bark darkened, their branches reaching low, almost like hands. We stumbled into another clearing, and there it was again. The same cabin, the same flickering light. Grace broke down. "We can't escape this place." I pulled her close. "We will. Just hold on." The front door creaked open on its own. Inside, the red shoe lay on the floor again, but now there were two more beside it. One small, one large. 3 shoes. I looked at Grace. They're trying to tell us something. A whisper came from behind us, soft like a child breathing near my ear. "You shouldn't have come here. You'll stay, too." The last thing I remember before everything went black was Grace's scream and the door slamming shut. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was pouring through the car window. Birds were singing. Grace was asleep beside me, her hand in mine. For a second, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then I looked up. In front of us stood the same crooked wooden sign, "The Hill of Lost Children. Do not enter after dusk." And hanging from the signpost was a small red shoe. Grace stirred awake and whispered, "Lucas, did we ever leave?" I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew the truth. We were still there, and the road ahead was gone.
Kindly subscribe the channel and comment if you liked the video. Thanks for watching.